So I guess at the very root level, the collective kind of act like a compass within DeFi, where DeFi is a very broad umbrella, and it's really hard to have a sense, especially from the outside, of how decentralized a protocol really is, or autonomous and trustless it can be. So one of the first mission we picked for the collective is really to act like a compass, a beacon, helping users realize which protocols are on the most decentralized end of the spectrum and pose a minimal amount of risk to their funds. But this kind of signaling role is only the first step, because we intend to also support those protocols. So for that end, we have some assets we control internally, especially liquidity-driving token, and that allows the collective to direct essentially incentives to liquidity pool involving the tokens of the protocol that are within its supported scope.
Welcome to the Deus Ex Dao podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Deus Ex Dao podcast. Today, we've got a returning guest joining us, Token Brice. How are you going?
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm sure that the listeners are mostly aware of your time at Liquity, but can you please give us an overview of what your role sort of progressed from at Liquity? And that will probably be a good segue into what we want to talk about today.
Yeah, for sure. So I started at Liquity about 18 months ago, and I was hired on head of growth role for chicken bonds, which were unreleased, and it was about 6 months before the release of the chicken bonds. So essentially, in a bit of, I started preparing the launch strategy for chicken bonds and figuring out the marketing plans. But as I was doing that, I realized there were a lot of opportunity on the liquidity protocol itself that were underserved. So I started allocating some time to do that. And, one of the first ones getting LUSD added on Avi, first as borrowable asset, and now we have a collateral status. And other things related to liquidity management, essentially on LUSD, and to a lower extent LQTY. So over time, my role kind of shifted onto those missions as we had more people joining for marketing, and it just made more sense, to work on densifying that ecosystem on LUSD and LQTY. It was a bit of a underserved angle of the protocol before I joined.
Yeah, cool. And I think you and I have spoken about this before. Basically, the key infrastructure is obviously Aave, and Aave integration is like the sort of tick of approval, I guess, that you have some sort of like legitimacy as a project. So obviously, we're all big fans of Liquity and LUSD. But I guess sort of transitioning to what we're chatting about today, obviously, Liquity being an immutable DeFi protocol that doesn't have like massive VC backing and a team that's like, I don't know, speculation and sort of all these things that you can do through like non-immutable protocols that we've sort of come to see enter DeFi. What did you notice was like underserved and one of the struggles, I guess, with immutable protocols that they had to face and that you had to face when you were trying to sort of get LUSD to where you have got it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the biggest disappointment was realizing that it's going to sound a bit naive now, but essentially there is no free lunch for immutability. I don't know how to put it any other way, I would have been expecting other protocols to kind of value this and give a bit of a premium in how they treat LUSD, be it that they spontaneously consider adding LUSD within their procedures without us having to like completely lead the charge on it and make sure it's an option being voiced out to their governance. So that was like the bit of the disappointment, I guess, is all major protocol, Avi included, they will focus on what brings them utilization, essentially, and that's mostly centralized stable coins or other things like that. So yeah, that was a bit of a hurdle to overcome, and I guess this is what led to this idea of the DeFi Collective, because this is essentially what we were expecting to find for Liquity, what I was expecting to find for Liquity, and I did not find, now being made available to more immutable, resilient protocols.
Yeah, cool. So you're taking your learnings, I guess, and the struggles of working with a immutable DeFi protocol that maybe doesn't have the resources that others may have, and trying to bring that to everyone else. So I guess that's a good segue now into the mission statement of the collective. So I know you've been on a few podcasts already, but if you don't mind sort of explaining what the DeFi Collective is and what the collective aims to achieve, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, so I guess at the very root level, the collective kind of act like a compass within DeFi, where DeFi is a very broad umbrella, and it's really hard to have a sense, especially from the outside, of how decentralized a protocol really is, or autonomous and trustless it can be. So one of the first mission we picked for the collective is really to act like a compass, a beacon, helping users realize which protocols are on the most decentralized end of the spectrum and pose a minimal amount of risk to their funds. But this kind of signaling role is only the first step, because we intend to also support those protocols. So for that end, we have some assets we control internally, especially liquidity-driving token, and that allows the collective to direct essentially incentives to liquidity pool involving the tokens of the protocol that are within its supported scope. So that's one of the activity we can do for projects we support. But yeah, there are also a few other polls we can go through, but mostly around governance activities and advising, in a way, those projects with topics like related to tokenomics, legal even, and liquidity strategies.
Yeah, cool. And I guess there's like a very underserved and a misunderstood area of the market, especially liquidity management. You've sort of become like the face of that, I suppose, within Ethereum DeFi, I guess. And I think it is something that is like massively misunderstood and maybe underappreciated by these protocols. So
Definitely.
if there is someone that realizes that maybe they're not able to handle this internally, is it something that they can reach out to the collective, or are you a little bit more picky with who you work with, or sort of how do you select who you work with?
Yeah, so we have those guidelines that I was referring to. We're working on sharing more public documentation about it. There should be a blog post actually coming today to kind of give more context on the challenge that it is to establish those guidelines, essentially, because it's really hard to find a criteria that would work for every single type of protocol. But so the guidelines act as kind of the first layer to determine which protocol we support or not, we work with. But then in the early stage of the collective, so currently, we also essentially factoring in the impact we can have on those protocols as a way to prioritize. And so we're looking for a sweet spot with protocol. We are part of our early batch of protocol supported, where we can actually have a serious impact on them, help them grow, and then the collective will have some form of be involved essentially with that project, with their governance, if they have any, and we hope it can be a really like mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, that's good. And I think, and I guess like the not a requirement is immutability, but I think from what I understand, you want to aim for sort of governance minimized or trust minimized protocols, right? So
Yes.
that are sort of aligned with everyone and what we think DeFi should really be about. Get the most help.
Yeah, it's actually really hard to corner those design principles, but there is a bit of an old tweet from last month from Aidan Adams that kind of summarize a bit of perspective in that topic, because it's really more a matter of a mindset when the protocol was designed than the absolute characteristic of the protocol itself. Because again, we're really looking to have something that is fair and not excluding, more complex use cases on the basis that they are not at the maximal level of resilience, but like, hey, go build an imitable 5,000x leverage perp dex. That's a bigger mission than just something like a Uniswap. So, yeah, this tweet by Aidan Adams from my head. Sorry, I can't find it, but it goes like essentially automate what you can because it just works. It's just the best form of decentralization. Then incentivize what you cannot govern because it's still a decentralized way of solving the problem. And finally, govern what you cannot incentivize. And so it's really, this perspective of governance minimization, where governance is seen as a last resort, where you had 2 layers of potential solutions you tried before, and they couldn't work. So you are resorting to governance. And this is really what we're looking for, protocols that understand that and, resort to governance instead of defaulting to governance.
Yeah, cool. I like that. I think I've actually seen that tweet somewhere before, but yeah, I completely align with that. And I think we almost lost our way a little bit. Like the first iteration of DeFi protocols were truly, or like tried to be as decentralized as possible. And like Uniswap, UniV1 still works. Like the contracts are deployed, they're immutable, it works. And Uniswap have done it, Liquity did it. And then we seem to like stray a little bit from that until now it's basically like go off-chain voting and everything controlled behind a multi-sig. And then hopefully now we can sort of stray back onto the right path, or some at least are trying to, which is good. So I know that there's different areas within the collective. So maybe if you don't mind giving a bit of an overview of like the core members and the different aspects that they bring, and then sort of expanding out into sort of the different areas as well.
Sure. So right now, in terms of, I guess I forgot to mention that it's a Swiss non-profit association, the way the collective is structured. And so right now the association is essentially under a triumvirate structure where we have 3 board members, which each bring a specific expertise to the collective and kind of irrigate the relevant area of the collective action. So I guess myself, we talked about me enough, but as you would have understood, I am mostly involved in matter related to liquidity management and the governance related activities we're doing for protocols. And another angle, maybe we'll discuss a bit later, is on treasury management of the collective, which is quite an important topic. On my side, as board member, there are Niels and Florian, each with a very synergetic and useful expertise. So Niels is more a technical person. He's a protocol designer, protocol architect, essentially, and able to get involved in topics that are a bit more heavy on the technical side. So the area is kind of spearheading is this this research angle. So that would include, for instance, specifying the guidelines and producing other form of research that are useful for builders of immutable protocol and supporting initiatives in that area. The third board member is Florian, and Florian is a lawyer by training. And so he's focusing more on topics related to what we call user protection. And this is the idea of using those guidelines to clearly communicate to the users what kind of risks they're taking, and maybe over the long run even have an impact, who knows, on the laws that are being drafted. So, for instance, in Europe there is MiCA, and MiCA is making a kind of special distinction for truly decentralized protocol. I think that's how they call them. And then they finally, just a few days ago, released some additional precision as to what it entails. Essentially, they don't want to see any single entity controlling any point of the protocol. So it seems quite in line with what we envision too. But yeah, we want to make sure this kind of understanding is preserved in future regulations.
Yeah, cool. I think that's very important, hopefully, to have someone that actually understands DeFi on a complex level, having some sort of say, or hoping to sort of contribute to the regulation. Because as we know, like things change so quickly and it can get very, very complicated. So for like regulators, they just see DeFi and they think that everything's the same. It's like this blanket thing, and it's all like sort of branded with the same sort of brand or tarred with the same brush. So I think it is super important to have someone that can maybe provide that nuance when there is a protocol that is immutable or a very governance minimized compared to something that's basically a centralized company with a token that looks a lot like equity and a few people control the multi-sig. They should be treated differently, in my opinion, anyway. So that's good. Yeah. Yeah, cool. And the research side, what sort of like research would we come to? Like, should we be expecting to come out of the collective? Is it like protocol research, or is it maybe some philosophy research or anything like that, or what could that look like?
Yeah, so this one is kind of shaping up as we speak, but there will probably be a few angles explored here. So definitely, it seems like the community is quite eager to work on a more philosophical angle, as you were saying, with the production of a manifesto. So that's something we're definitely keen to support. On what the board is working on, it's more essentially research that would help builders of potentially immutable or resilience maximized protocols to want to do it easier or to do it with more guidance. So one of the things, for instance, we are considering, we have limited resources, but probably produce it at some point because it's just too needed, is a kind of overview of the best practices when it comes to decentralizing your front end. So like all the solutions that are now available to host a website, in a more decentralized fashion, IPFS, Internet Computer, and so on. And other practices, questions related to the incentivization model for front-end decentralization, or even development best practices. So, this is questions we're getting quite often at Liquity from other protocols that are looking to replicate a similar approach. And so we figured, if we can have some open, available research on the topic, that would probably make it easier for the projects who are considering having a front end that is maximally decentralized, and even include in the tokenomics level a component to incentivize those front-end providers like Liquity is doing. So it could be things like that. Yeah, sorry.
So I was just going to jump in there. When you're talking about that, it just makes you realize how sort of ahead of their time Liquity were with the incentive structure for the front end and all of that stuff. It's like interesting that people are still asking for guidance on that now when they've been had it implemented since the beginning and deploy the contracts and walk away.
Yes,
it's a pretty like amazing feat of engineering, really, to have it like as immutable as it is and as stable and battle tested as it is now. It's very impressive.
Yep. So on that front, I would really like us to have something coming out in the next few months to just provide more resources. And then other initiative in the research area are a bit more long-term, but they are in the same vibe of essentially trying to remove some hurdles that developers of immutable protocol might find themselves facing. Another long-term one is this question of agent-based modeling for essentially economic research on immutable protocol. And here it's to keep it a short story, it's a kind of modelization that you do mostly for immutable protocols because it's like extensive economic modelization. And so regular protocols to kind of cut on audit costs, they tend to not do these kind of things because it is quite resource intensive, and they can always adjust their economic parameters right after the launch. But immutable protocols, they don't have these options. They cannot double their fees 1 week after the launch because, oh, sorry guys, we made a mistake. We didn't realize we were going to use the protocol like that. So they have to plan for this in advance. And the way they do it is with these kinds of local simulations that are agent-based modeling, very extensive ones. And so, long story short, they require expertise that is not broadly available, even if you have the budget for it. So here we're thinking at what we can do to help maybe a specialized service in that area emerge, or maybe through resources to make some best practices available on building an agent-based modeling solution. So, anything really that can make it easier, make it less effort to ship a code with resilience in mind.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it is. extremely important. And I suppose that is one of the reasons, I would say one of the reasons why a lot of people ship code that is like, has a lot of different parameters that can change. And like we've seen things ship recently that have had massive fluctuations in the interest rates and all of these sorts of things as well. So I think it is like a shortcut that some people take, but it is super expensive as well and difficult, like you said, difficult to get hold of people that are capable of actually running these models extensively enough that you can ship something immutable from that.
And this is like, I think, a good example of where you see this, what I was trying to tell you before about, like, you know, the philosophical dimension on how to build a protocol. Because to take a more concrete example, for instance, the question of interest rate on a lending protocol, you know, you can have, so on Liquity, it's the borrowing costs are set. And you just have this base fee that modulate based on essentially what happened on LUSD recently. There's a lot of redemptions or a lot of meeting. It might go up temporarily to kind of act as a buffer. But you have forks of Liquity that are having governance and can modify this parameter. But now what's interesting is within the fork, we've seen two different kinds of behaviors. You know, so just this week, we had two forks that raised the interest rate, but the way they did it is quite different. So sorry for Prisma, I don't know if it's up yet, but they're voting on it, and the vote is consensual for all the reasons we can go into, but the vote is going to go through. But the thing is, they're raising interest rate also retroactively, so affecting people who already have a position. And that was interesting, you know, because just a few weeks before, another fork, Gravita, also raised its initiation fee then. But essentially, since it's an initiation fee, it's only paid at the inception of the position. So people who already opened the position, they paid the previous 0.5%, and they're fine, or 1%. I don't know exactly what it is for them. And only the new users will pay that increased fee. So, you know, in terms of philosophical alignment, let's say, both have a governance that can modify the fees. But in the Gravita side, I'm not picking winner here, it's just an example. I feel like it's been done in a way that is more, you know, mindful of the long-term consequences and of the user base, of the idea that those users, you know, if they come on a Liquity fork, they expect a sense of stability in the borrowing conditions, even if they know that governance can change it. You know, it's not something that should be varying every couple of days and very rapidly, and affecting them retroactively. So I thought that was interesting to see, you know, even with like mutable governance, you can have different practices that really shows a bit more about the long-term perspective on the protocol.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something that maybe gets taken for granted by the average person is if you do go to Liquity, you know that it can never change. Like your costs are set, you know them up front, and that will be it. So it's interesting to hear that people, or one of the forks has retroactively changed it. So then are we really gaining anything from traditional finance if the rules can just change at any time?
Yes, exactly.
I don't think so.
I think that's like kind of the moral high ground of DeFi. You know, if we want to defend that ideal, we need to kind of be exemplary on that front. Of like, hey, look, all protocols, you know, the conditions. You don't have like hundreds of pages of terms and conditions that you get updated every 3 months with a small line changing, telling you your interest rate double. And if you haven't seen it, too bad, it's up on your face. No, we can do much better than that, and we should really try to uphold that standard, even at an ethical level at the end of the day, because it goes beyond, you know, again, the pure technical specification. You will never be able to specify this with code, you know, like you need to be responsible in how you change your fees. I mean, there are ways to frame it, but it's still a matter of behavior at the end of the day.
Yeah. And not everyone's lucky like we are to work in this industry every day and sit on Telegram or Discord or Twitter and see the updates. Some people wouldn't even know that it has changed. And you come back in a month's time or 2 months' time and realize that your interest rate has doubled and what you thought you were doing is no longer as profitable or anything like that. So yeah, I agree. And so we touched on the board members, but maybe contributors for DeFi. And if anyone listening is wanting to contribute, how is it possible, and how do you go about that?
Yeah, so we're trying to really have something as open and accessible as possible. It's an association at the end of the day. On top of the boards, we already have contributors. Right now, we're mostly focusing on the treasury management, but we also have external contributor helping us with topics like, for instance, the brand identity. We had the logo done by YL. We did a few other logo in the DeFi space, including DeFi Llama, not a small one. We have also Mulatan, who is a June wizard, and will be helping us out when we need for maybe further campaign to have some synchronized June analytics prediction. And so on the treasury side, then we have Admis, who is assisting me with the strategy and the tracking of the treasury, and yourself, Luude, also helping out on this front. So there are various ways to contribute. The best way to get started is the Discord, and we're trying to have this structure where people can kind of get onboarded organically, work on the topic they want to focus on. And then depending of how frequent and involved, how frequent their involvement is, we're looking into formalizing this and maybe compensating them. So that's like the main way to get involved right now. And as for the members, so right now the members are just the initial board, so myself, Niels, and Florian. But same thing here, we're looking to expand that association membership with ideally minimum of 4 external profiles to kind of 51% attack ourselves in the coming months. So we are looking closely at those people who get involved early and spontaneously, because they're obviously demonstrating a keen value alignment with the association and its mission. And we believe they will be good members potentially.
Yeah, cool. So that's I do like it. It's basically if it resonates with you, you just start to contribute, and I think that's something that's really good about DeFi as a whole. Is like it doesn't matter if you're a non or if you're doxed or if you're whatever race, religion, sex, whatever. It doesn't matter. You just can start contributing to something that you care about, and if it's sort of valued and you do a good job, then doors open or things happen. So I think that that's like a really good thing about our space, and it's good to see that the collective sort of fostering that as well.
Yes.
Maybe we touched on a little bit, and this is sort of like your area and what we've spoken about or worked on a bit together is the treasury management. So maybe you could give an overview, and I think maybe for anyone that doesn't listen, this sort of plays into like Liquity as a non-profit. DeFi Collective as a non-profit, but sort of how does the treasury management work, and then how can this benefit the protocols that you're working with?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the DeFi Collective has received some form of initial funding thanks to donations from projects that are sympathetic to the cause and some loans. And most of the assets that are on are what we call liquidity-driving tokens. So the like of VCRV or others, they allow the collective to direct various kind of incentives on 6 layers to the pair of its choosing. And this is the main one of the main angles we see for supporting the protocols that are part of our guidelines. So we're essentially able to attract liquidity on their pair. We started with LUSD on some stable pairs, as well as boxes, and we're going to be kind of expanding the coverage as we go. Now, the good news is this activity is actually profitable. It generates a revenue in terms of trading fees and potential bribes collected, as well as the fees and the incentive collected on liquidity providing positions. And so the collective is able to gather a weekly revenue through its harvest. And the perspective here is first allows the collective to be self-sufficient, because it's able to generate more revenues than its cost since pretty much its inception. So the contributors are paid from revenues derived from this activity. But there is also a surplus, and this surplus enables collective to essentially accumulate some core assets that can then be used to directly provide liquidity in the protocols. So no magic here. Long term, we're looking mostly at accumulating ETH and stablecoins to use them in various protocols. So maybe mint some box ETH, for instance, on Cat in the Box, or mint LUSD from Liquity, and so on.
Yeah, cool. And is this just confined to mainnet or across various layer 2s as well?
No, yeah, we're already active on Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon POS, Base, and Polygon ZKVM. And there might be more coming as they are, if they become relevant to the collective. So it's really the idea of working on layer 2s very intensively too. Actually, right now, most of the revenue is coming from layer 2s. This is also where we have the bulk of the liquidity driving capabilities. So it's highly correlated.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, if anyone's building on a layer 2, there may be some liquidity driving happening on those chains as well. And then maybe we can't have the podcast without touching on the most watched repeg of all time at the moment. Maybe you could give us a bit of a overview of how you took control and became the dictator of the Go repeg, and then what's happening there, and your sort of plan, or basically the overview of what's going on.
Yes, for sure. So indeed, the collective kind of got involved with the Go Liquidity Committee through myself, where I've been member of the committee since it started about 2 weeks ago. And there were a few initiatives being led, but I guess the main downside there was that everybody was kind of leading their own idea, and some of them were conflicting with one another. So it was really hard to have a coherent strategy at the goal level to engineer its repeg. So I offered to to assume a benevolent and temporary 1 month dictatorship of the collective, of the liquidity committee, sorry, to try to synchronize that strategy to repeg Go and have something coordinated. So the way it works is we're using biased liquidity providing essentially as a way to support Go's price. So the liquidity committee is deploying incentives on pairs that are essentially heavier in the pairing assets, so be it USDC or USD, for instance. And this generates a buying pressure on the Go stablecoin to push it progressively towards a higher price. Now, it's not it's not always that easy, because there is there is movement on Go, you know. So like right now, for instance, we had a good start for this new strategy, and we were able to gain almost a 4 cents. And since then, there's been a lot of Go minted that were sold and pushed us back half a cent in price. So yeah, it's a bit of an ambitious challenge. The target is 0.985 by November 30, so in 24 days. And it's roughly 2 cents north of where we are right now. So that's a challenge. But we're launching a new initiative today. We're diversifying the pairing. So far we were doing it only on Go USDC on Maverick. And now there's going to be 2 concomitant set of pools with Go LUSD and Go USDC. So that should help create additional pressure. And yeah, I don't know. No, it doesn't go live, because right after this, actually, I have to launch those pools. There could be good opportunities for liquidity providers. But even whenever this airs, they will have options on Maverick. Just look for the Go boosted pools, and yeah, there are ways to contribute to the repegging and earn a nice yield in the process.
Yeah, cool. I have been sitting in one of those pools as well myself for the last few days, and it's been good.
Nice.
Maybe I know that they're a partner of the collective, but why Mav? So why Maverick, and what do they offer, I guess, for something as sort of nuanced as repegging a stablecoin like Go? What do Maverick offer that sort of mean that they're the place to sort of facilitate this liquidity?
Yeah, so the thing that is very unique about Mav is that as a project, you can literally draw the liquidity distribution that you want and then post incentive on it. So it's a very direct way of shaping your liquidity versus what you have on other venues that tends to be a bit less straightforward and not as direct. So that's the main interest. It allows us to create those uneven pools that are positive pressure for Go. But we started also experimenting with another tool called Merkur for Uniswap v3 incentives. And here it's again a bit less direct than Maverick in the sense that we're not creating a liquidity shape and telling people, hey, you get incentive for matching exactly that shape, but it's more about distribution of incentives. So there is a set of incentive for Go USDC LPs of the 5 BPS pair on Uniswap v3, but the way the incentives are distributed is ponderated on your Go balance in the pool, mostly, I think 80%, 50%, your USDC balance, then 50% on your Go balance and 5% on the fee collected. So it's the distribution of the incentive is really biased toward how many USDC are you providing to the pool. And it's a way of, again, incentivizing this buying pressure. But it's not as direct, and it had some impact on the pool. It helped rebalance the structure more in favor of USDC, but not as much as we wanted to on Uniswap. So we'll see, but it's all cutting edge stuff we're trying and measuring and then adjusting quite often. Yes.
Yeah, cool. No, it's very, very interesting to watch. And obviously, like a lot of the other stable swaps, they just incentivize everyone equally. So if the pool's completely unbalanced, you're still incentivizing liquidity that you don't really need or want there. So these two options, I guess, make it very good for someone like yourself that can sort of target that incentivization a bit more. And I don't know if you can answer this, but will Aave be sort of trying to solve the root cause of like the lower interest rate or the sort of cheap price to mint Go, or are there any other initiatives that will be sort of working hand in hand with the liquidity to try and bring that peg up as well?
Oh yeah, what we're doing at the liquidity committee level, it cannot be sufficient by itself. It's like a push. It's helping to resolve this, but we need also to indeed, as you highlighted, to resolve that more fundamental imbalance. And so there are a few things being worked on at the Aave DAO level. So there is an interest rate increase coming up for Go that should help resolve that spread a bit more. And they're considering all those things essentially pertaining to additional utility for Go to help stabilize, because that's maybe the other biggest current hurdle is that there is no way of essentially producing a yield just by keeping Go as such. And so it drives a lot of Go borrowers to essentially swap it for something else, or at best get involved in liquidity pools. But then we run into the problem that we need to make sure that those pools are unbalanced in favor of USDC, so it creates positive pressure, else it's just like dumping liquidity. So it's a bit of a conundrum we're at right now, but everything is kind of converging to have a reversal, I hope, on the Go price shortly.
Yeah, cool. Well, in the meantime, some of us that are doing it can get paid in Go to sit in USDC and do our bit for the mission as well, which is good. So I guess I don't really have much else to cover here. Maybe if there was any other partnerships that you could highlight coming up for the collective. Is there anyone that you can talk about that you're working with?
I guess we can put some other under the spotlight. So we've been doing a few things with LUSD and Liquity too. And that's kind of where the initial experience of that repeg situation came from. So it's really cool to be able to, sidestep some skills we developed for one project to help another. And it seems like this angle actually, depending on how successful we can be, is receiving a keen amount of interest from other projects, being liquid staking derivative tokens or other stable coins. So that's something we might be we might become quite known for. So there are a few projects that are not live yet, but we're looking into helping them on those topics from start. Something like a diet stablecoin, for instance, or the DIVA e-staking derivative token, DIVIs.
Yeah, cool. So it doesn't have to just be stable coins. Any pegged assets are sort of like the wheelhouse of the collective.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, I think from my side, that's all for today. So if there was anything else you wanted to cover, or maybe where can everyone find you in the collective and get in touch if they want to get involved?
Yes, so if you are interested with the collective missions, do join the Discord. This is where things happen. This is where you can get involved on various topics and even share your suggestions as to what you would want the collective to see doing. As I was telling you the story of this manifesto, is really like not something we had in scope already, but just community members popping on the Discord and being like, hey, I would see a manifesto for this, let's write it. And then working on it. So this is definitely the kind of attitude, behavior we like to see, and yeah, definitely support. Now for the next things to look for, I was mentioning earlier, we have this article written by Niels that is coming up this week latest for sure. It's almost ready already, providing a bit more guidance on this question of establishing the protocol guidelines. And this is something where we want to involve the community as much as possible. So really looking, to establish some kind of minimal document that could serve as a basis for discussion for the community to together iterate on, more than, projecting something. Here are the guidelines, guys, let's go, we roll with it. Because we understand that it cannot be consensual. Even, with this community driven approach, there will probably be people that are pissed by those guidelines because their protocol don't fit in. So we really want to hedge for that as much as possible and make sure we hear from everybody so that, they are as fair as they can be.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. No, that's good. I think one thing, as someone that is in the Discord, it's very high signal, low noise, which is good. There's not too much chat in there and you don't have to catch up on a million messages every day. So when something is said, it's usually of good value, and it's something that you can just leave your notifications on for and check in every day and catch up. So that's something that I enjoy about it as well. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for hosting me. And yeah, see you around on the Discord.
See you soon. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Deus Ex DAO podcast, a place where some of the most progressive and innovative builders, thought leaders, and traders in the crypto space come together to discuss all areas of the crypto industry. Whether you're into DeFi, Layer 1s, Layer 2s, NFTs, or anything in between, we've got you covered. And as a reminder, nothing said on this podcast should be construed as financial advice or as a solicitation to buy or sell any digital asset or security. The comments, views, and opinions expressed by the hosts or guests on the podcast are their own. As always, you'll need to do your own research.